Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome all to this session of Let Us Talk It webinar. We are extremely happy and excited to bring forward after a rested and maybe a long weekend that we were all waiting for. After that, it's a new beginning for many schools, new beginning, and we are all charged up to begin this week, this month, and this part of the day. And we welcome you, all those who have joined in on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We welcome you to this session. And if you have any comments, feedback, questions, please do put it in the comment section. We will take it. And we will definitely answer your question or queries that you have. And if you want to attend our Let Us Talk It webinar, further webinars, which happens every week, if you want to attend or present as a speaker, please email us at webinar@letustalkit.com. Trust me, nowadays it's very important to be that communication part, that being a speaker, to being able to do something else that what you do always adds value. So if you know anyone, and a friend, family member, or a colleague, please share the link. Please ask them to join. And it's a knowledge sharing platform. We'll all benefit from each other for sure. So it happens. We are always live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please do share and comment and do subscribe to our channel as well. Okay, with that, we begin today's session. Today's topic is Symphony of Flexibility and Agility. So, and there is something lovely and musical about the title, I guess. But and the topic, the description of the topic is also very important nowadays. The best practices for navigating your work, hobbies, and family priorities during times of uncertainty, change, and complexity. So let's find that symphony of flexibility and agility. And to talk on this topic, we have with us our guest speaker, Hudong Tony Liu. He graduated industrial management operations with engineering from Purdue University. He started consulting in business associate role for life sciences and lighting suppliers for hospitality industry. He went on to become operations manager for Inland Empire area of a mid-sized landscaping company. Then went for his MBA at University at Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he was president of the Graduate Finance Association, president of International Consulting Network, VP for Association of Data Science and Analytics, and his concentration was on IT control and data analytics. He then went to New York City and started as an engagement manager at Mu Sigma, the largest pure play data analytics management consulting company in the world, and have been account manager there, managing a portfolio of clients within software, IT, tech, and life sciences for over a year now. And some interesting facts about him is that he was born in China, but moved around 7 different states in USA, and now he's in New York City. And he's a huge, huge, huge sports enthusiast and also a huge movie fan. He grew up on Star Wars and Harry Potter and cosplayed at San Diego Comic Con multiple times. So with that interesting introduction, we welcome you, Hudong, and it's our honor and pleasure to have you at this Let Us Talk It webinar. Over to you.
Julian, thank you so much, and to the entire host of Let Us Talk It. I am very humbled for this opportunity. I'm very excited, and I just want to make it very clear. The entire genesis of my presentation is to make it so that it's engaging from back and forth. So if you, at any portion of the time, if you have any questions, if you have anything and thoughts that you would like to discuss back and forth, I believe that the only way to grow, and growing is something that has no endpoint. It is infinite. So from that standpoint, please ask questions. We will engage back and forth, of course, in a very diplomatic and very engaging manner. Now, with that said, I do want to mention one thing to everybody on this call, that my name is Hudong Liu. A little bit of a factoid is My wife, we're currently all both working from home. She's currently in the other room. So I made sure that the door is locked from that side. My name, Yudong Lu, translated in Chinese to English, is Winter Moon. So back in the day when I was a bachelor, as you can imagine, that was very much a good pickup line for me when it came to it. And as I say this, I'm looking at the door right now, making sure that there's no, she's not coming through the door or anything like that. So that's a little bit of a fun factoid for you as well to get to know me a little bit personally. Now, with that said, today's topic is very much so the symphony that comes between how to navigate between the complexities we've seen in the last, and before I share my screen, we've seen in the last just this year or the last 2, 3 quarters, especially from business standpoint, the sudden change, what I call sudden shock. And if you were to think about it from a graph, sudden shock is really just a matter of a time in the x-axis and then the impact on the y-axis, or give me an inverse of that. Whatever you want to think about it from that standpoint, this sudden shock makes ripple effects across your life. And in the past, you've always heard the cliche, life is a roller coaster. But I would say in today's world, life is not so much a roller coaster as a big mess of things, in which case you really have to understand your priorities, not just priorities within work, but your priorities depending on the maturity of your life cycle. Are you currently a student? Are you currently just starting your career? Are you an entrepreneur mindset? Are you looking to really build a team? Are you a manager? Currently, are you, I mean, it's the truth of the matter is people are the unemployment rate is very high right now. Where are you currently in that scenario? How are you feeling? What are you doing to navigate and build the people around you to make sure that you get back to your status quo, to where you want to go short term and long term? These are all topics that I want you to keep within your mind. And that is the one purpose I want to imprint within your mind as we go into the conversation. I'm going to pause here before I share my screen for any questions at all. Okay,
No,
so
I guess we are good.
silence is music to my ears when it comes to consulting, so I'll keep it at that. So without much further ado, everybody can see my screen okay?
Yes.
So we are talking about the symphony between flexibility and agility, and essentially navigating, and not just within your professional life, but all the way from the start when you were a kid, how you were born, the people around you, all those changes, complexities, and changes in your life affect your mindset, and your maturity level rises and grows and decreases based off of your failures throughout your entire life cycle. And that is what we're going to be talking about today from both professional, personal, and long term priorities. Now, again, the agenda is introducing a little bit about Mu Sigma, navigating, and all Mu Sigma is really all about navigating through change, not just in your career, but your life. A little bit about myself, of course, and how I've been able to navigate through it from my experiences. And then we're going to talk about some scenario simulations. I'm just going to be giving 2 high-level ones, and we'll love the audience to think about one example within their life. It can be just within a marriage. It can be a relationship with a close friend who you moved away from and then lost contact with, or it could be something within work related. And then your answers, and we can engage pertaining toward that. And then just bringing it all together towards the end, and how data, specifically data, can help navigate through this. And we have data that we've seen across the board, not just within, for example, taking web scraping from ct.gov and understanding the kind of interactions right now with social distancing, but also the kind of effects it has in terms of fishboning and data analytics as a core process within each and every one of your businesses and your value streams, from manufacturing, R&D, all the way through to your horizontal spheres. So that's going to be the agenda. So from that standpoint, I would give a little example of what I mean by your evolution of your life. And you really, I would recommend for people over here, with all demographics, every single 2 to 3 years, take a step back, take a look at your life from every single angle, every single lever, and reevaluate yourself. Is this a track that you're going with? Is this what you're looking to in terms of the short and long terms? And we'll begin from the very beginning. Not everyone starts off with the same level of equality. So when you think about very beginning in the left side, your childhood, your upbringing, how many places have you moved? Your mentors, your teaching system. Were you born into a low income family, a high income family, or a middle income family? All those things are factors, but it doesn't determine what's going to happen to you as you go through your evolution of your life. That really is up to you. And what I mean by that is your high school years. I can tell you when I was in high school, being a big sports fan, playing within the high school teams and everything, you see all the cliches. I mean, I'm sure people here have seen Mean Girls. I'm sure people here have seen all those Hollywood movies about high school. It's not like that, but at the same time, you definitely are unsure of what you want to do, and you go out there and you try to experiment with friends, different cliques, or you stay in the same clique. So you're uncertain of who you are. Then it comes to the college level. And if you're fortunate enough to get to college, or if you're in the middle layer where you're uncertain where you're going to go, still, you want to make sure that you experiment. And when I talk about experimentation, that's experimentation in terms of what you're doing within your current life to get to point A and B. So again, if you're at a stage where you're lost between two and three, from high school down to, let's say, if you're getting into college or if you haven't yet, reevaluate yourself. Talk to the people you trust and make sure you get a good support system to help you give good advice. And from that standpoint, if you're in college, experiment. It is one area, especially as undergrads, to go and be able to cross functionally go from, let's say, your computer science major, go to the college of business, find a core, I would say, program over there that is a club and interlock with them. Or if you're a business side, come over to the computer science side and say, you know what? I am interested. I see this is the way the future is going within the industries across the board, across all the verticals. I would love to play a role over here to learn more about the computer science portion. Cross learn, because when you go into the real world, when you go into your first job over here, that is exactly what you're going to be interfaced with. Immediately from the first day, you're going to be talking to people. Let's say you're going a finance job, financial analyst. You will be talking to your P&L manager. You'll be talking to potentially an investment banker, your manager within that field, but you will also need to be able to have the EQ, emotional intelligence, and the skill sets that you've tested and experimented on. If you failed, that's fine. That's what school's for. But then you fail quick and you pivot quick and you learn from that, so that when you go into your first job, you are able to have that intelligence emotionally and professionally to communicate with the right people, so that you begin then, honestly, in terms of depending on the size of the company, is it a well-oiled machine? Are you simply a cog in that machine? And if so, are you okay with that? If you're okay, then that's completely okay. Or are you in more of a small kind of company? Or are you starting your own company? Do you pretty much wear every single hat? Are you a Renaissance man from that standpoint? These are all things that you school preps you for, and it's your first job. And one of the main horizontal things that comes across this is through all of this kind of stage, your relationships, your friends, your mentors, roadblocks, bullies, people on the ways, your hobbies, whether you're moving, you're dating, you're ultimately going down to marriage, or let's say you start out with pets before children. From that kind of standpoint, you want to ensure that you're able to navigate and reevaluate. And that's why reevaluating is always important. I'm going to keep on emphasizing the fact that every 2 to 3 years, reevaluate your life. And after working for, let's say, 3 to 5 years, that's really where, ideally speaking, maturity comes into play. You should know what your short term goals are, your long term goals are from both a family standpoint as well as a professional standpoint. How do you mix in your hobbies to make sure that you relieve stress during these, for example, these times of pandemic and uncertainty, these times of social change that's going on? And then ultimately, when you go down to over here, how do you balance all of this together? How do you be transparent? You will have to be true to yourself no matter what. That's the one thing I've always found out in my job. Throughout every single career, whenever I've never been true to myself, I failed. And the one lesson I've always learned from that is that I go back and I try to be true to myself, and I have more visibility in terms of what I need to do to get to point A to point B to point C. So be transparent and be true to yourself, but also be transparent with your family members, your spouses, what your goals are, share it with them so that you're aligned going forward. That's all about balancing. And at the very end, there's never an endpoint for growth. One of the main philosophies of Mu Sigma is learning over knowing, continuous growth in all aspects of life. If you're not reading books over here regarding, let's say, best practices, how to navigate between stress if you're stressed, how to be inspired from one of the best people in the past, whether you're in science, Albert Einstein, whether it be Elon Musk, whether it be stories about Steve Jobs, whoever interests you, all the transformations, all the disruptions. If you could think about Jeff Bezos, that is the one disruptor right now, the main one, in my personal opinion. The fact that he's able to transform essentially a shipping e-commerce book company into changing the entire lifestyle for flexibility and I would say much more easiness in terms of access to anything that you would need across different verticals. And at the same time, from the B2B side, the ability to really bring in and allow companies to accelerate their data pipeline with AWS, whether it be a software as a platform, whether it be a platform as a platform, or whatever it might be within the AWS toolkit. That is something that is one, and I know that he has many books, but there's another one coming out soon as well. So very much so from that standpoint, I highly recommend that. I'm going to pause now. This is a long slide. Any questions at all? I don't have access toward the chat. So is there any questions at all that people want to raise up?
Not yet. And you have access if you want to, but there are no questions right now.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit my journey in terms of my life. And again, the uncertainty levels over here, I know it's a little bit blocked, but from your time of, your parents might divorce, and I'm being truthful here. I don't sugarcoat stuff. Your parents might divorce, you're moving all the time, which is very much you're going to see within me. Layoffs, questioning yourself, changing mayors, unhappy with the job, pivoting careers, getting fired. That doesn't necessarily mean you did a bad job. There's macroeconomic factors, managing your dating life, your marriage, children down the line. These are all things along the top that are horizontal that you have to navigate. So a little bit real quickly about my, I would say the signs of my evolution in my life. I was born and within Nanjing, so a little bit of a factoid over here. There's a line over here. And let's say Beijing is right here. I know this is hard to follow, so please bear with me here. Um, Beijing's over here and Nanjing's over here. This line over here, if you're above this line during the winter time, any cities above this line get central heating. If you're below the line, you don't, and you really have to then be dependent upon buying clothes. Let's put it that way. Layers upon layers, stacks upon layers. Nanjing is right below the line. So from that standpoint, whenever I used to often visit Nanjing and my relatives over there, and it would be during the winter times, and I come from Chicago. And I got to tell you, coming from Chicago, where the shovel is your best friend, and then going back to Nanjing, even then, Nanjing was still tough for me. So that is a little bit of a factoid over there in terms of how China's, I would say, the social and environmental works. From my standpoint, I was born in Nanjing, China, came over when I was young, and came over to Texas. My dad was an electrical engineer. The only way that he was able to really improve the income level of our family to help us to make sure I get the education that I need and later on my little brother needed was to vertically integrate as an electrical engineer. And because of that, we moved a lot. So from Texas to Maryland to Virginia to New Jersey to Massachusetts down to two areas in around the northern area of Chicago, Arlington Heights and Vernon Hills, which is ultimately where my high school was. Then I went to school, of course, in Indiana. And then from there, my first job went over to Irvine, California, SoCal. So very much so. If you've never been to California before, very much recommended. From that standpoint, from SoCal, then went back to, again, Illinois for my MBA school, then went to North Carolina where I worked at Lenovo, and then went back into consulting in the data analytics space for New York City. Now, I don't imagine, but anybody in the audience here who has moved more than I have, I'll take that as a no. What I will say is this: I don't regret it for a day. Very much so. Between even less than a year, I would have to go to a new school. But what that instilled within me, and that's part of your life cycle, is the understanding of how to interact with different people from different ethnicities, different income levels, because who knows who they'll be in the future? Who knows if you're going to interact with them again in the future? But just getting understanding of their culture, understanding of how to communicate with them, an appreciation of their culture, and learning from that, that's all going to ingest and be enablers and drivers for you in your career going forward. So that is a little bit of my the complexity of what I would say of my life going through that. So a little bit about myself and my primary focus and concentrations. As I said, it's been a roller coaster career, but my main focus right now is on data analytics, specifically what you would call these days in corporate a program manager, being able to translate exactly an architecture to business owners. If they want to involve procurement or involve internal IT, then very much so, I can communicate that as well, the architecture from asking them from the ideal questions, such as what is your current data lake and pipeline? What exactly are you using for ETL? What do you have currently with databases that you want to ingest and bring together? And then what ultimately are you using for your toolkits? It can be ones that we can recommend. It can be ones you already have in place with your internal data analytics team, or it can be something within the cloud. AWS Kinesis for batch processing and um, real-time processing, just to give an example. Translating that into not only how to communicate it for the business owners, but also what? What exactly does that do for your business and your function from that standpoint? One other area is project management, and the other area is finance and operations, which will always be one area that I'll be interested in from a corporate side. So for finance and operations, this is really where my corporate side has come into play. So whether it be, let's say, within the Inland Empire area, whether it be Lenovo or AT&T, from a financial standpoint, operations standpoint, from a project management standpoint, understanding exactly who to hire. And typically speaking, when you come toward a certain level, you're going to have an HR partner who assesses talents for you, and then you vet that process, and then you go through the typical hiring process where you and the HR partner vet them and ask them questions. So there's that, or you're always going to have constraints in the company, especially during this COVID kind of scenario, in which case you say, you know what, resources are low, budgeting review, we just happened in quarter one and quarter two are low. What's going to happen is you're going to have to work with what you have. So in that case, then you have to build that skill set of talent development, nurturing your team, empowering them, especially when they're all working from home. So from that standpoint, over here for as the data analytics, very much so data engineering to the modeling. If you have two variables, why would you use an I-base or why would you use something like a neural network when you can just use simple regression? If you're talking about, let's say, a decision tree with classification models, then you can potentially bring in other models as well. So I won't dive too much into that for the people who are not very much within the data analytical field, but that is what pretty much I'm pretty much doing currently. And that is why for my MBA, my concentration was focused on IT and data analytics, because I knew that in the future, data is pretty much the new oil. Oil drove, let's say, Britain, making sure that all the geopolitical factors of trying to make sure you lock down the Mediterranean area. Now, having power of data and the so what of that data within every single function in your business, and that is what's going to drive being able to be flexible and being able to navigate from a business standpoint the future. And then ultimately within finance and operations from the corporate side, P&L manager, and then supply chain from that standpoint. I'm going to pause here for any questions regarding any of these standpoints. Anybody would play within these roles?
Yes, it's going good. I think it's I like the scientific approach of how you started the first slide and the rest.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure it's very engaging. I will tell you this, I've worked within corporate, and within corporate, I have had vendors such as Accenture, Cognizant, ZS Associates, McKinsey come to me, and I've also now been in the Mu Sigma side. So you really have to understand really the difference. Looking at both sides, I can tell you there's benefits from both, and that is part of your reevaluation period. So now moving on then, this is the one, what I would call the, you will see this, and you can go online, just type in best practices, and you will see this. But I wanted to make it a little bit more scientific in terms of a neural network. And I'll make it alive of one of the platforms that I can showcase over here, what we call EOC. And it'll come more alive as I explain this. So one of the best practices is to engage workers, making sure that whether you're a manager or even if you're just simply a business analyst, an associate, senior associate, everyone can be a leader. So be a mentor or find mentees, be a guider, think team oriented first. And if you're a manager, nourish your team, identify the skill sets you need to find talent. At the same time, surround yourself with the right people. There's I put in the quotation marks, so that's a little bit, I would say a little bit, I I digress in that, and I sort of feel like it wasn't the right move to make because it's just a quote that I wrote myself. So I'm basically quoting myself. But if I was a smarter person in a room, to be perfectly honest, to be diplomatic, I would help in whichever capacity. But if I was the smartest person in the room and I wanted to grow, I would leave the room. I feel like, do I need to sort of explain why someone would want to do that? Surround yourself with the right people that can bring you from point B to C, from point C to D, to wherever exactly you need to be. If you're the smartest person in the room, what is your opportunity? What is your capacity for growth? So I'll leave it at that. In terms of identifying connectivities for other areas of interest, making sure you understand the org structure. If you're in finance, sure, let's say you're working within the treasury field or you're working within accounting or something, and making sure all the books and balances are going correct. But if you're also have an interest within, let's say, potentially FP&A or something along the lines of interlocking with the project management operations group for finance, make sure you understand the org mapping. Who is here and who are open to discussions. So do a little bit of a vetting process, talk to people, understand that you block their calendars accordingly, and make sure at the same time, of course, you do your own work, but make sure you connect in other areas. If you're somebody who wants to pivot into computer science and you're somebody who's just working within, let's say, business intelligence, you're seeing all this work from people grabbing SQL from databases, ERP systems, CRM systems, and then you're seeing it ingested into a single database repository. And then all these models are being done and all these outputs are coming into, let's say, Tableau or let's say Power BI, and there's insights in real time. You're like, wow, these insights I can now filter and I can give into a presentation to my boss's bosses. How did they do that? Then understand the org structure of the IT structure, who you can talk to, understand how they did that. And at the same time, branch out. So you have your own development program, if you're lucky, within a large enterprise and organization, let's say Workday, for example, or Global iLearn. At the same time, though, go out there and look at the various online services out there. I mean, all these schools right now that we look at right now, the main change and disruption is they're going for an online platform. The University of Illinois online IMBA was just ranked #1 in terms of disruption and innovation by Poets and Quants. For those of you who don't know, Poets and Quants is one of the best reputable web sources for academic institutions, both graduate and undergraduate level. People going to school right now, what is a hybrid model for that? So from that standpoint, these platforms, Udemy, just to give an example, EDX, courses that can give you certifications, courses from Amazon themselves. Amazon most recently took their internal learnings and development and put them onto YouTube. So you go on there, you go to GitHub, which is a platform for you to get all the codes and modules and any kind of syllabuses, and follow that YouTube page and grow so that you can have opportunities to pivot entirely if it's 180 degrees, if it's 270 degrees, or entirely 360 degrees, making sure that you are able to pivot with the right skill sets in preparation beforehand. And it all comes together to create what I call a neural network. In this case, we're networking and having that reputation, your branding of being a mentor, of being a leader, no matter what position you're in, and then the growth of longing to understand all different areas. Because if you understand how an organizational works, how finance works, how procurement comes into play, how, for example, the CTO organization interlocks with the R&D division of a life sciences company, then the roof and the ceiling is infinite, to be perfectly honest. This creates a system that really allows you to really build upon your career going forward. I'll stop here for any questions at all.
We are good. Please continue.
Okay. So a little bit of Mu Sigma real fast. I know, what is it, 36 mark? How much more time do I have? Just real quickly. Time check, please.
Yeah, you can go for another 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So we are very much so. We have a geographical presence. You saw that we have headquarters within Chicago, New York City. We have headquarters within the Seattle area. And of course, we have headquarters in Shenzhen, China, in Bangalore, which is our main office. And these are just some of the scopes of work that we do across all the areas. And we understand that within every single MNC right now, every single large enterprise, they are looking to emerge and try to subsidize any kind of cannibalization, or I would say competition from the US side by going to growing and emerging markets. So having a deep understanding of the country's compliances. In China, the FDA version over there for life sciences is the NMPA. Exactly over there, there is a price ceiling on drugs. In America, there's no price ceiling, unfortunately. I will keep it at that. I won't go into too much politics over there. But from that standpoint, all these kind of regulatory and market needs, from that standpoint, you have to understand as well if you want to go into this space. And Mu Sigma very much so plays in that domain. Now, back in the day when I first started out, we would have your Excel sheets and I would create my models. And that's fantastic when I was first like a consultant within the hospitality field. That was fantastic. Then I started going to corporates, and then you'd had your ERP systems, your supply chain management systems, your ECC systems for procurement, for example, CRM systems, supplier relationship management systems, all the way through. Now, what we do with the Mu Sigma is we make sure that we incorporate our art of problem solving. And by doing so, you can think of these as processes and platforms as if you're a cook, this is essentially your kitchen. And all of these allow you to lay out ingredients for you, prefabs, modules, codes, and underneath and above that is the bucket of what the type of work that you're trying to do. Is it market segmentation? Is it market mix modeling? All these things help you accelerate it, and that's why flexibility and speed and agility and making sure that we do it with the data points for accuracy is our main value proposition. And most importantly, the way we see it right now is we still see the shift, especially in China. You go to China, WeChat pretty much handles every single thing for you. But over here, we wanted to take these systems of records, bring in the AI, ML, the neural networks, intelligence systems, and create outputs for our clients that can be web-based, it can be mobile-based, or it can be software development, any kind of software that you can think about using, open source, commercial, and make that into a real-time solution so they can get information in real time for both predictive analysis and prescriptive actionable items going forward. So I'll stop at that over there. It's a little bit more about what we call the D3 stack. So from data engineering all the way down to where the very engineering math heavy. So you have to understand the modelings, which types of models to use in this case. One simple example is if you have two variables, there's no need to use neural networking or KNN networking. You would just need regression. It can be time series regression. It can be clustering regression. I'll keep it at that. And then ultimately, then what is the so what? Bring in behavioral sciences and workshops, collaborate with the business owners to really understand, can we be an extension of your data analytics team, or can we be pretty much your muscle within any one of these fields? So I'll keep it at that. This is not a pitch for Mu Sigma, but just a little bit of what we do over here. This is an example, and this is all really just, it's nothing's proprietary here, but it's an example of a way that we showcase to the business owners so they understand exactly what the back end, middle end, and front end is for a web application we wanted to make. Now, here's one that we would bring in if they wanted to say, okay, IT, come inside, let's dive into this. And this is where we give it, and this, again, everything is all not proprietary. So this is just Amazon data stream using DynamoDB, using Kinesis over here, and putting it into Redshift, which is Amazon's toolkit for their biggest relational database warehouse over here. And then all the kind of operations of the models and the ultimate, what we call the top layer over here. This is something that IT you have to be prepared for. Moving on now with the time. So a little bit of scenario playing for all the people out there. Number one is supposed to show first, but let's go with number two. So there's a gut feeling from town halls, whatever it might be, interlocking with your colleagues, that's raising alarms within you. You don't know what it is, but it's just a feeling that you've had, whether through from school, through ethical training, business responsibility. How do you do your due diligence between, let's say, making a big lifestyle change or starting to question with, let's say, your direct reports in this case, to trying to get clarity toward some stuff that you feel is not the right thing to do? Anybody want to take a shot?
Can you ask it again? I'm not very clear what exactly is being asked.
Yes. So within business, ethical responsibility, and not just internally, but what you have to do within your external network is very important. So from that standpoint, a scenario would be you just have some sort of gut feeling within you that your company is performing some kind of action or doing some kind of practice that you feel is unethical. It's raising alarm bells in your head. How would you go about it in terms of trying to find out the truth and making that kind of due diligence, doing that due diligence before making any kind of big lifestyle changes?
Yeah, very interesting question. I think, yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, though I did not understand it 100% probably, but like you mean like kind of I can initiate a survey where people can anonymously provide the feedback or, things like that.
Yes, absolutely. So seeing what there are between HR, what kind of platforms are there? So you can do surveys, think about other things, but doing it in a way that doesn't raise any alarm bells between your direct reports. If you feel they have a stake within this, is very important as well. You want to make sure you protect yourself first and foremost, but at the same time, the main purpose of this is that you want to work for a company that you feel that is going the right direction, is feeling from an ethical standpoint is doing the right things. And that at the end of the day, for a lot of people is what makes them happy more than maybe more than the work themselves. So that's one scenario. Another one I think everybody can resonate to is COVID just hit your entire team. And let's say you are a manager in this case, a brand manager, and your entire team, your brand manager is involved. I'm going to give an example for a very common example for just a brand. Let's say CPG in this case. Your brand is you manage a portfolio from, let's say, oral care, toothbrushes, down to soaps, down to cough and drop medicines. And now your entire team, they can be business analysts, they can be specific team leads for those portfolios. What are your first steps? What do you think are your first steps that you should take? Okay, I'll give you an example of what I did for my team over here. So I think,
There is one answer. Um,
oh, sure. Let me,
I think, yeah, Vidyadhar said socialize with your peers and see how they see it, understand reasons behind those actions, check if there are similar patterns outside. Um, Number one, how are they situated work life balance wise?
exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you for answering that, whoever answered that. That is exactly how it is. And before you even do that, this is a little bit cheesy, but Albert Einstein always said to solve any kind of problem, and I know that's a little bit more on the science mathematical side, but to solve any kind of problem, if you were to give me 60 minutes, you would spend 55 of the minute defining the problem. So let's say you go into over here, all the steps you had mentioned would be buckets over here. Buckets A, B, C, D, and E. Each of those will be work streams in terms of how you would try to fishbone exactly what's currently going on and how that kind of change then could be the second level below that in terms of how that would affect from working from home. So let's say your peers, you talk to them and you say, what is the best practices you're currently doing? and they'll give you ideas in terms of, let's say, they interlock with social happy hours during teams, or they've already done and accelerated some cadence calls in the beginning to say, you know what, this is the message from high on up, and this is what we're currently doing at home. Let's set up some cadences. Everybody, I trust you first and foremost, all those things going forward. So definitely that is one example. And then one of the things that I did when I was taking on one of my life sciences accounts over here, and very much so, the biggest change for me, to answer to the person in the call, is the fact that a lot of my team members are offshore. From that standpoint, the biggest change for me is I now typically wake up anywhere from 5:30 to 6 a.m. And for the first 5, 6 hours of the call, being able to have their bandwidth and time, I make sure that whether it's a he or she or as many team members can come in from the China team, from the India team, from the US team, we get whatever we need to do done, and we do it asynchronized. We don't waste 1 hour in a single meeting unless it's something that really is driven by, let's say, your upper leadership team meetings. That is one of my biggest changes. And the rest of the day, whether it be 6, 7, however many hours, would be client relationship management and thinking about further steps in terms of improving your priorities and creativity, right? So Google allows you to have time specifically for any kind of creativities. That's where we got Gmail. That's where we got Google Hangouts, all those other portions and functions. So at the same time, very much so, Mu Sigma allows that as well. So that's how I tackled on my issues. For the person who answered, that was exactly, I could not have explained it better. Thank you for that. Those are the two scenarios I had in play. I know we have about 3 minutes left. So the, the rest of it was just about really Mu Sigma and the kind of work that we do, in terms of those stuff. So we talked about regression. We talked about being able to identify what models to use. But in these days, there's so many people from China, from all over the world, who understand exactly deep learning, machine learning models. And then people ask you from a standpoint, if somebody outside looking in is asking, what exactly is AI? How does AI help you? What does robotic process automation help you in supply chain for, let's say, blockchain or whatever it might be? These kind of questions can be very hard to answer if you're talking to somebody who's outside in. So you have to be able to answer it from a high level. So one thing to make it very clear is that AI is what you would think about in terms of the final endpoint of fully automating something. But in between that, you have to understand that there needs to be very complex deep learning and machine learning algorithms out there that you have to put within the infrastructure, the backend, as well as the middle layer. And once you run the model, let's say you have 20 or 15 variables and you want to make a call center from it that can make actionable items on the fly for you. Then you have to make sure that you put in the modeling, all the variables in place, the potential text that you classify from the call centers into images and data, ingest it within there. And then from there, then you iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate. And there will be, a whole bunch of iterations until you get to a certain amount of accuracy that you can say, you know what, we're done with the development and deployment and testing stage. Now we deploy it exactly into the front end. It could be a call center, it could be a web application, it could be a software. So that is to let you know exactly what the definition of distinguishing between AI. AI is not simply robotics. It's not simply just taking the latest algorithms. It is an entire endpoint, in which case there's military intermediary steps involving deep learning, machine learning, and then at the back end, using the most innovative, if you want to, in this case, what we're trying to push in Mu Sigma, most innovative solutions out there for building your pipeline to get that started. And then these are all the kind of classifications from machine learning. You want to do content batch processing, you want to do pattern recognitions for using, let's say, optical image data. All these things over here are examples over here. And the last thing I want to show is I'm going to forget about all of this is what I call one of the things that we call EOC. So if you look over here, we use the analogy of the housing structure. So we have communities, houses, rooms, and bricks. And within the communities, this is the highest layer. It is essentially a single repository. I'll use this analogy again. It's like a kitchen for you. And if you were to go into this kitchen, let's say you want to do customer strategy. You go to customer strategy over here. And then there's 4 different buckets we've seen across the board for clients and for customer strategy. Let's say you want to make sure you decrease your customer churn for, let's say, banking account. You go into here, all the kinds of methodologies. So whether it's main, the analytical data flow, what we call the vocabulary, if you're not able to talk in the same vocabulary as your client, then this is going to be a very hard roadblock. All the kind of prediction analysis, and if you want to dive even deeper into this prediction risk analysis, go into here, analytical data flow, output visualizations, all these things are here laid out for you as ingredients to help you accelerate your studies. So that is what I'll show within EOC. I'm not sure how much more I can show from that standpoint. And I will then end it right over here, essentially. So thank you very much, everybody. And I will leave the rest of the time for questions and answers. I hope this was impactful. If you have any questions at all pertaining toward any specific questions, my personal email, I'm very happy to provide that out. At the same time, my LinkedIn, please connect with me. One of the things I always love doing, and one of the things is when I was within UIUC, is being part of the admissions class. So helping undergraduates prepare for their mock interviews and their resume building. And then once you're a graduate, being more of a leadership role within consulting organizations within the computer science department that you want to definitely increase in the breadth of your knowledge. So from that standpoint, if you want to reach out to me if you're interested in navigating to different other careers, I'm always open. My door is open essentially, and I will stop over there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yudong. It's been so impactful, and the personal connection, always personal stories, anecdotes, always helps to understand better. So if we have any questions, could you can unmute and ask that. And Jayant, if we have any question from Facebook, YouTube, please let us know. And while they are searching for the questions, just wanted to let you know that we have these sessions, Let Us Talk It webinars every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 12 to 1 p.m. EST. And we have two exciting professional webinars coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow's topic is Instance Connectivity Alternatives in AWS, an overview of cloud-based alternatives for connecting to instances inside AWS. And on Thursday, we have a very impactful webinar, trust me, how to impact, influence, and inspire with a signature story. Ways to know how you can sell easily, gain consensus, and be successful. And as usual, we have our youth webinar every Friday. Same time, 12 to 1 p.m. EST. And this week we have our youths who will be brainstorming and on topic on social issues. How can the youth be involved for causes at a global scale? So these social causes, so please join us. And if you have a student at home, we do these mentoring sessions, preparing sessions, prep sessions every Tuesdays, Wednesdays, from 4 to 5 p.m. EST. And just to let you know that for this Friday, actually the youth session will be, since the school have started, the youth session will not be from 12 to 1 p.m., but it will be from 4 to 5 p.m. EST. So with that, yes, just that's a little change that's going to happen. But yeah, any question or
I think that's I think that's amazing, especially the one pertaining toward how to use story building anecdotes to influence anybody within internally or from an external standpoint if you're doing business development. That is one that I really recommend everybody out there who's listening to this right now to attend if you have bandwidth and time. Because I will tell you right now, being able to take, let's say, quotes or your own experiences and being able to communicate it and making an impact, talking about it in a story way, storytelling way, and then making them connect the dots. Or even better, if you can bring in the story and then allow them to slowly themselves connect the dots and say, oh, very much yes, then you have done your job in terms, I would tell you this, in my business, you have done your job. And that's when you can come inside and say, absolutely. And here's other A, B, 3 and 2, 1, 2, 3 and points that you can talk about. So very much so, if I had bandwidth, I would definitely join, but that is one that I would recommend to everybody currently listening. So if there's no questions, the one last thing I'll say is that the one thing I've seen across the board is when you think about companies these days, it's all about, in the past, it's really been about cash flow. If you didn't really have a great 1 or 2 years, you try to do buybacks, or you try to increase your cash flow to do investments, whether it be divesting or acquiring companies as such. These days, what's really important in that symphony between not within your life, but within business, is understanding that the new denominator is not so much economies of scale, economies of cash flow, and being able to optimize that, but it's economies of speed, economies of agility. And then if you take the delta of that, then it's pretty much acceleration. And the people right now, the organizations, and even within your own life, if you're able to take that and you're able to figure out a way to quickly experiment and make necessary changes, especially with the COVID coming to a portion, I imagine in Q2, Q3, where it's sort of stabilized with the vaccines coming within play, then you are ahead of the curve. And so many times in the past, whether it be the financial hit within 2009, whether it be, let's say, the entire Great Depression, companies who were ahead of the curve in terms of agility and speed and experimenting, those are the ones who came out on top with innovation. I think if you were to talk to Blockbuster, not to rag on them or anything, talk to Blockbuster, talk to Kodak, they would very much so say that they wish they knew about this a little bit faster. Experimentation, innovation, thinking above the box. I'll keep it at that. Thank you. So Julian, that's all I have for today. There's 2 minutes left. How would you
Yeah,
like to
I'm
close this?
sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
There was a technical issue at my end, so I was kicked out. So sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I just gave one of my philosophies in terms of the way that companies need to prepare themselves in order to jump ahead of the curve, even those that are behind the curve before the COVID, how they can do to innovate and be agile. So from that standpoint, I'll just stop over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, audience, for joining in today. And hopefully, you will be with us in the other sessions following.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yurang. It was good the way that you connected on multiple areas from the life and work, and also the logical way of solving the problems. Yeah, which is very much needed. So yeah, definitely we will be in touch offline on for any synergies. Yeah, on the other hand, I think I want to let you all also know that we have these youth sessions, and one of the interesting topics where youth will brainstorm today internally, like in a prep session at 4 p.m. Eastern time today and tomorrow, like typically Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern time. The youth will brainstorm and do preparation for the week's topic, and then they go live on Friday 4 p.m. Eastern time from this week. So for today's and tomorrow's session about the topic is the youth and social causes, because one of the teens asked last week. I have a lot of passion for social causes, like animal welfare and so many other social topics, me and fellow teens, but we are not earning our salary, but we want to make an impact. How can youth make an impact for the causes that they believe in on a global scale? So that was the question from that teen. It really set us into thinking. So we are having those sessions as well. Yeah, today 4 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, thank you everybody. Yeah, please continue, Julian.
That's a pretty large scope, Srini, a very, very good one to have, especially pertaining toward today's pandemic and social scenario.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. We will see you again tomorrow, and have a wonderful rest of the day today. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us talk it.
Thank you
Everybody
all.
be safe. Bye-bye. Take care.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.